ever. You believe deeply in the empowerment, the economic empowerment of women, and you believe deeply in diversity. And I remember you talking about something that has stuck with me, that you have to teach young children, boys and girls, from a very young age to appreciate diversity and to appreciate each other, and to say that young women can do exactly what young men can do. And I remember that so clearly. So this is going to be a dynamic conversation, as his administration has been so dynamic. Over 80% of your trade in Canada actually comes from APEC countries, which obviously includes USMCA, the United States and Mexico. And you have launched your Indo-Pacific strategy for growth and opportunity. So what are your expectations for this meeting?
Well, first of all, I mean, we have to remind ourselves two things about trade. Trade creates growth, but nothing guarantees that that trade that creates growth is going to make sure that the growth is well shared. We have to focus on making an argument for trade and for the growth that it comes from by making sure that everyone can participate in the benefits of that growth. That's where making sure that we're negotiating free trade deals that protect women's rights, that protect labor rights, that protect the environment, that work with Indigenous peoples. These are the kinds of things that are essential that, quite frankly, when we started negotiating trade deals, we started 9 years ago, people would sort of mock us and say, no, it's supposed to be an economic argument. I say, the economic argument is that everyone can feel the benefits of trade. Because if trade creates growth, it creates enough growth to be able to have win-win in any trade negotiation out there. But at a time of people not feeling like trade has done them any good, one of the arguments that we're seeing everywhere around the world is, well, then we're going to make trade good for you, even if it's bad for the other person. It introduces a win-lose into the trade negotiation frame. And Canada has never had that. We've always understood, a sense of scale, a sense of modesty, a Canadianness or whatever, that for trade to be effective, it has to be win-win. And that idea that there's plenty of growth to go around, we just have to make sure it's win-win, not just between the two countries involved or the multiple countries involved as we've signed large trade deals, but that it also impacts on citizens. And the instability in all economies, not just democracies, that come when citizens don't feel like the institutions or the economy or the vision for the economy or even the trade deals are there to support them, creates instability. People start withdrawing their support from trade. So that's why business communities, like governments, like people around the world, should be focused on making sure that the growth and the benefits that come from increased ties around the world are actually shared more generally with women, with workers, with environmental protections. Because that's one of the only ways of ensuring the kind of stability and predictability that we've had, that the world has benefited from over the past decades. And that's one of the ways that our government has been able to sign more trade deals than just about any other governments. We are the only country in the world, the only G7 country in the world with a free trade deal with every other G7 country. And just today we announced that we have concluded our free trade deal with Indonesia, the world's fourth largest country by population, which demonstrates that even at a time of protectionism and uncertainty, there is a way to create good deals that work as long as they work for citizens as well as the business community. And that's something that Mary's been absolutely amazing about focusing on.
Well, it's really, really terrific to look at trade from the standpoint of trade being able to create economic growth for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses, for women-owned businesses. We have a stat in Canada that I often like to say to people, and I like to say it to the business community most of all, because it really is about the return on the investment. So in Canada, if you add more women to your economy, we will add $150 billion to the Canadian economy just by adding women into the economy. And globally,
Absolutely.
it's $12 trillion. So, and we have seen that number move up by the greater participation of women. So, so I think it is in that secret sauce, which is what the Prime Minister says. Trade really does work when it can work for everyone in your society, including workers and those that often are underrepresented in the global value chains.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. So from here you go to the G20, and I know this isn't about the G20, but I would be really remiss if I didn't ask you about the elephant in the room, which is my election, or the election in my country, the United States of America. And I know behind the scenes everybody's kind of talking about that. Could you just give us some insight? Because, you know, as you said, obviously, there are people that feel deprived in the United States, which is how we've ended up in this path. But, you know, what's being discussed potentially is going to turn trade governance upside down. So maybe a little bit of your perspective.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, when Donald Trump first got elected in 2016, he made a commitment to rip up one of the most successful trade deals that the world has ever seen, NAFTA, or specifically Canada-US free trade deal particularly. And that was, you know, something he was absolutely determined to do, and it would have had deep, deep consequences, obviously on Canada, but also on the North American economy. We rolled up our sleeves and did the hard work of demonstrating that it was not just possible, but desirable to create a win-win, to update NAFTA, to update USMCA in all sorts of different ways. And the level of connectedness between the Canadian and the American economy, to be specific about that, meant that it would have been very, very difficult for the American administration to do something that would hurt the Canadian economy and hurt workers that wouldn't also significantly hurt the American economy and American workers. So based on those truths, we looked at ways to update and adjust our trading relationship, and we did that because the fact is middle-class workers in Canada and the United States have been building things together for decades and generations to tremendous success. And basing the arguments around this is how you create jobs in both of our economies, this is how you create opportunity and prosperity there, it was hard work. I mean, yeah, it wasn't easy, and nothing's going to be easy this time. Little secret, there is no American administration that is automatically easy for a Canadian government. They take a very robust look at their own interests, and Canada adjusts. But our ability to do that and protect good jobs in Canada is what's going to be at the center of everything. The fact that we have, over the years, created such strong links, and that there are so many strong links going forward, whether it's critical minerals, where Canada has the mines and the ability to develop those resilient supply chains that are reliable from a friend, that are less certain elsewhere around the world, whether it's our energy resources, whether it's the extraordinary workforce that we have. Canadian workers are some of the best in the world. These are things that we have as value added. But if we were going to go into any negotiations with the United States, or in any negotiations everywhere, looking for, okay, how do we make Canada win and the other person lose? That wouldn't work. But because we have always gone in, there's a win-win here, because trade done well can benefit everyone. That's going to be the approach that we're going to continue to have, because we do things together well.
Thank you. So many of the panels here at the CEO Summit have been around AI. And obviously, there's lots of discussion in Canada as well from a variety of perspectives. One of them has been governance around AI, and you've kind of taken a leadership role in that space. Might you be willing to comment on that? And then I have another follow-up question on AI.
First of all, yeah, in terms of governance, Canada put on the agenda in the 2018 G7 in Charlevoix one of the first conversations that we've had that are now have at all summits around global partnership and leadership around responsible development of AI. We created the Global Partnership for AI. It was specifically Canada and France working on that. That was a Canadian initiative back in 2018. When not many other people were talking about the global implications and regulations around AI. So we started that. The reason we started that was because Canada is one of the places, one of the primary places where people like Yoshua Bengio and Geoffrey Hinton, who just won the Nobel Prize, developed modern AI in how it's spread. So we had a certain amount of grip on that already. So there's a lot of things that we're doing around creating that right balance around AI that's going to both make sure that AI is not used for evil purposes as much as we possibly can, because there's a lot of anxieties about that. But more importantly, make sure that AI is actually there to empower everyone, not just the biggest businesses that can hire a whole department and invest massive money in funding to adapt to it, but how do we get AI into small businesses? How do we reassure people that AI can be a lever for greater productivity, greater opportunities? We have to make sure there's a framework that the whole world, or at least the democratic world that is aligned in its values, is working on to make sure that it's going to be effective. But pushing for AI is something that Canada has been able to do and will do and continue to do in responsible ways, and I'm looking forward to see a high level of uptake in our small and medium-sized businesses across Canada around AI as we do more investments. The other thing people don't think about enough when it comes to AI, and AI is going to transform our economies, transform our world the way the development of electricity did hundreds of years ago. It will touch every single job, everything we all do within 5-10 years. So it is coming, it is inevitable. The issue is, how do we manage it in a way that is minimally disruptive for the largest number of people? Yeah, lots of people are going to have to learn new aspects to their jobs, but it's going to be everywhere. The biggest limiting factor on AI is actually going to be power. The energy consumption necessary around AI, nobody has properly understood yet. And that's the one that I've been really, really obsessing about lately. How are we going to be able to, because Canada already is 80% clean energy grid. It's a huge advantage. Companies from around the world are investing in Canada because of our clean energy, because of our workers, because of our innovation, all those things. But as we look at how to develop the necessary clean power to power AI, not just in Canada, but around the world, we're stepping up. We've actually stepped up big time on nuclear. We just sold 2 new
Stole my next
full-scale.
question.
It was your next question? Okay, but it's, see, I've stopped talking about AI and not talking about the power needs around AI. And that's where Canada, yes, we have hydro, but investing again in nuclear, looking at two full-scale reactors we just sold to Romania, the uranium reserves that we have in Canada, the opportunity to build full-scale reactors and small modular reactors to meet the energy needs of the coming years. Canada's been facing a massive boom of investment from around the world of companies that want to come into Canada. Some of you have heard of Honda, Volkswagen, Michelin, Goodyear, others you haven't, Rio Tinto and others, that have come in and made Canada the #3 destination in the world yet last year for foreign direct investment. And a lot of it is because of the framework we have around environmental responsibility and clean power, but also because we have childcare and pharmacare and medical care and supports that are great for workers and benefiting from the privileged access to 2/3 of the global economy through free trade deals. So all those things together means we're actually limited right now by the amount of power that we can provide to companies, because so many people want to come to Canada. And that's where we're going to have to step up on nuclear and others to be able to respond to that. But I know, Mary, you've been big on the nuclear gateway we're creating for the Indo-Pacific strategy.
We sure are. And here I want to thank APEC Canada and APEC generally, because our APEC member in Jan De Silva has been, as she's been working through the APEC economies, and we, after we launched the Indo-Pacific strategy, and all of our interactions with our country partners, that's the issue, right? I mean, think about this region, a vast growing economy, the fastest growing around the world, a young population, very digital. And the needs for AI and the needs for computing, the needs for data is just a reality. And as their economies are getting better, you're thinking about power to not only do more manufacturing, you're thinking about power to run more data centers, you're thinking about power because your households are going to need more of that power. And then there is this other issue called climate change and the need to be able to tackle climate change, so providing power that is clean. And Canada is that country. We're a tier 1 country for nuclear power. It's clean, and we know that if we're going to meet our net zero targets around the world, and certainly this region, nuclear is going to be really a part of the mix. So as part of our work, we're launching a Canadian gateway for nuclear development for the Indo-Pacific, where many of the APEC economies are going to be a part of that. So we're really excited about doing this work to build that capacity.
So you're going to be building nuclear power plants in Canada and exporting them as well?
Well, Canada developed CANDU reactors decades ago. It was a reactor that was particularly appreciated because it had no weapons implications around it. You couldn't use a nuclear power plant to develop a weapons program if it was a Canadian one. It was just the way it was designed. And that was very successful over a number of decades. We're now upgrading the CANDUs to Monarchs, that is a more modern full-scale reactor, but we're also developing small modular reactors that we know is going to be a huge key to the path forward. Canada's actually got the first small modular reactors about to come online in the coming year as demonstrating a proof of concept. Lots of places are working on them, but that's going to be an essential part of the energy mix that we have to have if we're going to meet the opportunities, not even the needs, the opportunities of the coming years, and we need to be part of that.
And the value for Canada in the region is, it really is an end-to-end expertise, right? I mean, from the regulatory expertise that we have, from building the nuclear reactors to all of the training that comes in, in supporting that, the supply chain that exists in Canada today, the end of use around the recycling. So all of that expertise exists in Canada, and what this nuclear development gateway is really about is actually partnering with those here in the region, country by country, and sharing that expertise, co-developing some of this capability in market, because it's going to be different. I mean, you're going to be different if you're in Indonesia versus Philippines versus versus any of the other countries that are in the region. So it really is our ability as Canada to work with the region.
This is really important.
I bet you guys didn't think you were going to get a pitch on nuclear from Canada up here today. But these are the challenges that we're looking at, and how to build a better world, and how to make sure that energy is plentiful and affordable for everyone. And it takes governments to invest in the kinds of infrastructure and the kind of long-term vision that is necessary for your investments as businesses, but also for citizens in a time of uncertainty and upheaval everywhere around the world, to feel confident that there's a plan that's going to meet the future in where it's going, and not just wish it were different or hope that it was like it was in the past. The world is changing, and our capacities as economies to meet the world where it's going, or as Wayne Gretzky used to say in a very Canadian example, to skate where the puck is going, not where the puck is right now, is at the heart of the planning you're doing for the next 25 years as businesses, the plan that we need to do as governments, not just for the next mandate, but for the next generation. And that's where AI, you can't talk about AI without talking about the power necessary to generate it.
But this is really, and we're out of time, but this is really interesting because one of the things we talked about this morning when I interviewed Robert Smith is what is the job of the future? And your small reactors that can be exported is really going to give the opportunity in certain emerging markets where there's amazing talent that could open data centers and create real value-added jobs. You're exporting something which is of critical importance.
Well, one of the biggest inequalities that still exists is the fact that something like 40% of people living on the African continent don't yet have reliable, steady access to electricity. And electricity has been around for a century and a half in its current form, in its generation. The first power plant in New York went up about 150 years ago. And still, 150 years later, this foundational technology of electricity hasn't reached everyone in the way that we know it will transform their lives. If we have to wait 150 years for AI to actually empower people across the global south in emerging markets, then we've missed the opportunity to get the very best from everyone, and we've created the conditions for the kind of inequality and therefore instability that will be disruptive to the smooth functioning of the global economy, the way all of us can benefit from. So it is not just about doing the right thing on an economic sense. It's about understanding that the only way to do the right thing on an economic sense is to make sure that everyone feels like there is a path for them and their family and their community to be successful in the coming years, and that requires us all to think about that long term and the global issue in a way that, quite frankly, APEC does a great job, and APEC does a great job of bringing us all together. For 35 years, we've been coming together as economies to try and figure out how to create that growth and how to make it work for everyone, and that's what we're going to continue to do here.
Well, with that, I want to thank Trade Minister Ng, Prime Minister Trudeau for this wonderful conversation. We wish you all the luck in these meetings today, in the G20 over the weekend, and of course in Canada with your growth strategy. Thank you, and your political strategy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the Prime Minister of Canada.